Hello, it's day 14, and it was time for a real chat. I know there has been some beautiful and really easy to use tips that I've given so far, but today I wanted to be a bit more frank and a bit more real. You know, if you've been following me for a while, that my work is deep. And although I've given you surface level tips, I want for us now on day 14, nearly halfway through, to go a little bit deeper. And I would never expect you to go deeper without sharing something from my life experiences to help share my experience with confidence, but also that there's so much more dynamics at play than just something like confidence. And I touched on this before, but I wanted to be, really honest with you and vulnerable and share my life experiences because I would never expect you to go any deeper than I have gone myself. So today was sharing some of my own stories, but also and my own experiences in times where I might have struggled with confidence. And I talk about that idea of secondary and primary emotions. And most of the time, it's these primary emotions and motivations that are really going on behind what we might consider the lack of confidence. So if this feels a little bit too deep for you, be sure to go back to any of my previous videos that you mightn't have seen. But if you're ready to explore something deeper within you, today is the video for you. So we'll check when I share the stories. I'll tell you where I thought it might have been, a lack of confidence. There was a primary emotion behind it all, and that's what I had to get support with and address and work with somebody like me and a therapist, not just a coach. So I still have my cold, and I know I sound possibly worse than I do. So if I drink some tea throughout as well, spilling the tea, drinking tea, um, you'll understand. So getting into, I was looking back and kind of was like, what are the kind of three stories that I'd like to share that have those examples of kind of primary motivations? And it's one of the ones that I've shared before, but for those that might not know me and are hitting on my confidence challenge as the first time that you've had an interaction with me, I was thinking times in my life where I felt really low, like really low, and what had happened me to get to that point. And that was when my self-doubt was at its highest, my self-esteem, my self-belief, and my beliefs, about myself. And it was always something, most of the time, it was something that happened to me externally. So somebody or something. And actually, it's one story I haven't told before, but I was seeing a guy, probably one of the first boyfriends I had after being diagnosed with endometriosis. So around, let's say I was in my early 30s, and I was diagnosed at 28, and I'd had that really big surgery. And those first initial years, I was too unwell to even consider dating. But I remember getting back out onto the dating scene, maybe early 30s, and I fell for this one guy that I thought was really nice guy. And around that time, I think I had another flare up of my endometriosis. And I was like, he's not going to love me now. He's going to find out about this condition. He's going to find out that I can't have children. And I put all my kind of, expectations of us on him, him reinforcing what I needed to hear, that it was okay and that I was okay, that I wasn't damaged goods and all of that. And I ran. One of my behaviors is like I run the other way. I have that, fear, fight or flight. I have that flight thing where I go away. And I think I went missing for a few days. And when I came back and I explained to him, you know, and I think he at this stage was like, yeah, I don't think it's going to work. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And his parting words to me were, do me a favor and make sure you put on your profile the next time that you can't have children. Because I think, you're lying if you don't. And I was absolutely shocked. Like, we say something that somebody said to you, but because I had made him much bigger than he deserved to be, I already was just like, he just brought me back down to this tiny, tiny place. It's like he had to give a kind of a lasting knife in. And that sentence stayed with me for so many years that I, again, gave him the right to take my confidence away. But ultimately, the primary emotion behind that was I was always scared to be alone. And it was connection that I was really, really craving. So that loneliness, that really one of our bigger motivations as humans is wanting to be connected and belong in partnership with people. And those early years of endometriosis where I thought no man will have me because I can't have children. And I had these very, very prescriptive beliefs about myself that I really, really overly attached to. But not only that, they became my reality. So I met men who reinforced this idea of, yeah, you're not good enough. And it came out in lots of different ways. And I went on to meet more men who reinforced that idea because at the time I was crippled with that self doubt, but my thrive and my why behind it was I didn't want to be lonely. And one of those fears we have as humans is not wanting to die alone, and how that can hold such a tight grip over us. And it's why people want to have children sometimes because they have this fear they'll be left on their own and they think, children might be their savior. And I giggle, right? Because this is some of the beliefs that I had that I now know are not true, but they were the beliefs that kept me really small, that impacted my body image, where I felt that I was too fat to meet somebody, and all of this, built up this image of myself that was lesser and smaller, and I put the other person on a pedestal. And the motivation behind that was always I just didn't want to be lonely. And so much now and so much work that I have gotten support on both in my coaching and in some of the deeper practice I do around the systemic coaching constellations and therapy as well has really allowed me to know that no one person can decide my fate or tell me something that is absolute bullshit. That the truest confidence that I can have is coming from within myself. That, of course, we all need external validation. Of course, we do. We love to hear when somebody says you look great or you're doing well or all of that, right? We all need that. Again, that's this, because that binds us together, that I belong or, I'm accepted. So, and the motivation behind that and the primary emotion is our why is not to be alone, right? So that being afraid of being alone is that example there. I was thinking of other times where I was really, really low and the confidence was at its real ebb, and it was that idea of I lost my job for the second time in less than 12 months. And the first time it happened, I got a job really, really quickly, got my first redundancy. And although it was an end of an era and there was grief, right? There's grief. So the primary emotion when we lose our job is grief as well, because we were part of something. But again, it was this being afraid of having no money, because no money for me equals my freedom. So that is, again, the recurring fear around that would have made me really, really, really being filled with self-doubt. So the second time I lost my job, again, a second redundancy, again, through no fault of my own. It was during the crash in 2008, 2009, and the impact of that, and it went into 2011 for me. It was, that absolute, I was so gripped that I was going to be so penniless and so broke that I took a job that I definitely didn't and shouldn't have taken. But again, not to blame myself, it was out of my primary emotion was just pure fear of being so broke that I would have no freedom and, have to be reliant on my parents or whatever that was. And again, when you're in your 30s, and I'm well into my 40s now, into the latter part of my 40s, these were concerns. Your other friends were getting married, buying houses, and this idea that I wasn't able to keep up with others. Again, I wasn't going to belong with my peers because I didn't have money and they did. So again, that would have really, really, really dented in at my confidence in those years. And because I took a job that I didn't really, really, out of pure fear, I ended up working in a company where there was like a primary, person that had like bully tactics. Again, when my motivation is external and I have that like real sense of fear, that we end up doing things that are, not supportive. Again, not to, to look back with compassion on that woman and my younger version of myself that was so afraid, and how that really, really could impact, and what I needed to do to resource myself back out of that and back in a company where I belonged again, where I had money, where I throve and I thrived. Throve, is that a past tense of thrive? It is now. And that really, really changed everything again. The next company I went for, I became much more selective on what I wanted, that I wanted job security. I wanted a tribe of people around me that, that were my peers. And some of them are still such great pals that those years were like rebuilding years after like lots of different incidences that happened that made me really, really doubt myself, and doubt myself for all those reasons of loneliness, fear, being afraid of being on my own. So much of those motivations, those primary motivations, are the things that are masking, what we might say, I'm really low in confidence, but that's really what's actually going on. I'm trying to think of kind of, I suppose, one more story. Then I suppose even just, people think, oh, well, that's so long ago and you did so much work to get to where you are. And I wanted to kind of be real on like, I'm still human. Just because people see you as a coach, they think, oh, she has this all figured out. This time last year in January, it's actually, I think my anniversary is this week, where I broke up with the kindest human in the world, and that wasn't meant to be. And again, deciding that that wasn't to be for us, that was really hard. But that breakup and the subsequent weeks that followed, even up as far as May, I would say, of 2024, was a time of a lot of self doubt, a lot of questioning. What the fuck am I doing? What am I doing? I'm alone again, right? This fear of being alone and not connected. Not only I didn't have this loving relationship that I had, but I've no colleagues. I am 100% dependent on myself. I have no source of income right now. And all of the reasons why I could spiral into the self doubt. And it was the first time that I knew about resourcing. I knew what I needed to get support. And I suppose it's probably one of those things that is innately within me, is to be resilient. I've had so many knocks in my life, whether it was health or job losses or breakups. And in particular, I would say my endometriosis diagnosis and the years of just recurrent surgeries, that I had to be resilient, that I had to pick myself up every single time. And January was no different, except this time I knew what resourced me. And I knew I needed to get back to the sea. I knew I had my tribe of women that I would meet up to 3-4 times a week that would help me. And this external, again, where it is so supportive, and you find those people who radiate confidence and who bring the best out of you, and how that was such a critical part of what was my strong foundation this time last year, when from a job context and from a relationship context, that I really didn't have a steady ground. I didn't have a strong foundation. So it's about considering where are your strong foundations, like who and what can, when you have those shaky moments, where can you go back to feel safe, to feel like yourself, to feel like you belong? Because these are the primary emotions that really, as humans, that we need to sustain us. So today is a much longer but a really, really frank conversation. I keep saying frank, a Norma conversation around what is really going on behind the lack of confidence. What are those primary emotions that as humans that we crave and we need to survive, right? These are critical. And when fear, loneliness, and that fear of loss of freedom come, and we spiral around those areas, that's when you need support. You truly and utterly can't do this on your own. I certainly did not do most of that January to May last year on my own. I got support. I knew I needed it. I rebuilt myself up. I resourced myself. And to be with you now, 12 months on, of course, there are other things in my life that I worry about, and I have, some self doubt. but I know what I need to build me up. I'm the most resilient person I know. My mother used to always say that, like, you got like the maddest roller coaster life, but you always seem to get back on track. And each time I get back on track quicker, even though I'm allowed to rest, I'm allowed to be human, I'm allowed just to have a shit day, a day I don't want to do a video, etc. So knowing what resources you when we have those days that are low. And really, I'm going to leave you there. This is a much longer version. I'm sure you might catch up on this one at the weekend. But it was to be that honest conversation that you might see this person that is like booming through your cameras thinking, oh, she's got it all figured. I've had to, get those supports to really truly find my own inner confidence and not seeking as much. I still need positive reinforcement, but really seeking when I feel confident, what's going on within inside me. I feeling connected to myself? Am I listening to my inner child? Am I resourcing myself from the inside out? All right, everyone, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.